So, across the country, Conservatives are working very, very hard. And as a result, we are winning. Right? We are winning right here in New Brunswick, where you're lucky enough to have a strong leader like Blaine Higgs, and we're going to win in Newfoundland and Labrador with a strong leader like Ches Crosby. And federally, we have our leader, my friend, Andrew Scheer, who's going to be coming out to talk to you for a bit. In a few minutes, we're going to have him introduced. With that, I am very proud to invite my colleague, your 2019 candidate from Fundy Royal, the former minister for ACOA, and the guy who keeps us in touch with Atlantic Canadians, and quite frankly, he's doing a better job than the other 32 of them. My friend, Rob Moore.
He was elected in 2004, and in 2011, he became the youngest Speaker of the House of Commons ever. And in 2017, he was elected to lead our great party. Ladies and gentlemen, he's the father of 5 children, which I know as a father of 4 children, that's got to be a very busy task. But yet, he finds the time to do a fantastic job leading our party and holding the governing Liberals to account. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in giving a warm Atlantic Canada welcome to our leader, the leader of the Conservative Party, and the next Prime Minister of Canada, Andrew Scheer.
What a warm welcome. Merci beaucoup. C'est un grand plaisir d'être avec vous ce soir. Thank you so much. What a great warm welcome. It is such a pleasure to be with you here this evening in New Brunswick. And we have got a real opportunity as Conservatives to provide a real alternative to people in Atlantic Canada. You know, everywhere I go in the region, I meet more and more people who are telling me that they are tired of paying for Justin Trudeau's mistakes. They're tired of the massive deficits, the runaway spending. They know that the deficits that are being racked up today will have to be paid back with higher taxes. As sure as night follows day and spring follows winter. We hope spring follows winter. They know that these massive deficits will mean only one thing, that their taxes will go up. They know that because Justin Trudeau has already raised their taxes. According to studies, the average working family in Canada is paying over $800 a year more in taxes under the Liberals than before. Justin Trudeau famously promised that he was going to raise taxes on the 1%. Well, the top 1% income bracket in Canada are actually paying less in taxes. So working families paying more. Expenses and costs are going up as well. We know that the carbon tax is going to hurt Canadians, hurt working families, hurt families, small businesses, people that don't have the ability to get a special deal from the government like large industrial emitters got with the carbon tax that the Liberals introduced. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank the new Premier of New Brunswick for joining the fight against the carbon tax. It's great to have one more ally. Thank you very much. There is a growing wave of opposition all across the country against this tax, and it's great to have another ally in New Brunswick joining Alberta, sorry, not yet Alberta, joining Saskatchewan, joining Manitoba, joining Ontario. It's fantastic to see this groundswell against it, because we know that people in Atlantic Canada aren't looking to pay higher costs. Nobody believes that they're going to get a better deal from the government versus what they'll have to pay. It's a tax on commuters and a free pass for polluters. Our plan will actually speak to reducing emissions by incentivizing investments in energy efficiencies. It will not be a punishment on hardworking families. We know that the cost of gas will go up under this carbon tax. Justin Trudeau was asked about the record high gas prices in Vancouver when he was in British Columbia. And his answer was that higher gas prices are exactly what we want. Anybody here want higher gas prices? Higher gas prices might be exactly what Justin Trudeau wants, because he's never had to worry about that. But hard-working Canadian families who are struggling to make it to the end of the month don't want higher gas prices, and Conservatives' job one will be to repeal the carbon tax. Canadians are tired of paying for Justin Trudeau's mistakes, and nowhere is that more evident in Atlantic Canada. You know, in the last election, the Liberals went 32 for 32. Every single seat went to the Liberal Party. But since then, Atlantic Canadians have gone 0 for 32 as they watch their representatives vote against their best interests. A Conservative government believes, the Conservative Party believes, that Canada should be self-sufficient when it comes to energy. We believe in the principle of a major nation-building project that will bring Western Canadian energy to Eastern Canadian markets, displacing foreign oil and making sure that we're not dependent on any other country for our energy needs. And we believe that when you have a minister that's responsible for a department to innovate, to diversify the economy, to help achieve the goals and aspirations of the people in the region through an opportunities agency, that the minister responsible for that fund should be from Atlantic Canada. If I were a Liberal MP, I remember when Justin Trudeau, when he explained why he picked someone from Toronto to manage the ACOA file, he said that having someone outside of Atlantic Canada would make sure that bad decisions weren't made. What does that say about the 32 Liberal MPs representing Atlantic Canadians? There's so much we could talk about, ladies and gentlemen, but I want to get to your questions. But I do want to touch on another file. We see again the same old story with the Liberal government, and that's on the subject of ethics. Stories in the media about interference from the Prime Minister's office in an independent criminal prosecution. You add this to the list of being found guilty of breaking ethics laws with an illegal vacation. Several ministers found in breach of ethics laws as well. The ongoing issue with the Mark Norman trial as well. We find out more and more about interference from the Prime Minister's office, the central departments in government. Canadians deserve a government that is clean, that is ethical, and that is transparent. And we are getting none of those things from this Liberal government. A Conservative government will restore Canadians' confidence in their political system. So as we get closer to the election, you're going to see more and more policies that we'll be announcing, and all of it will be focused on making life more affordable for you, making sure that you have an opportunity to realize your dreams and your aspirations. Not a top-down government that wants to make those decisions for you. Not a government that is always looking to tax more and spend more and pick and choose for you. A party and a government led by a party that believes in the power of individuals and wants you to be able to get ahead, not just get by. That's the difference between Liberals and Conservatives. That is the choice this election in October. And I'm so excited that come the election in this fall, Atlantic Canada, those results come in first. And we're going to have a very good indication. We're going to have a very good indication of where that night is going when we see those first results come in. So I'm asking for all of your supports that we know as we're watching those results come in, not just in Atlantic Canada, but in Quebec, in Ontario, dans toutes les autres provinces, quand on regarde les résultats, I want to see that blue wave starting right here in Atlantic Canada, carrying us all the way across the country, electing a Conservative government this fall. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll throw it over to questions. Richard, and who's the... Great, John, great, okay. Let's get started.
And I'm a disabled veteran. I joined before you were born. I'm not as old as some people around here, but I'm 58. Now, over the years, I've seen a lot change in the military. We paid into a pension fund that we were promised would always be there. We were promised benefits. We were promised education. We were promised healing. Now, they do have some centers in Ottawa, of course. But those of us that are paying taxes on disability pensions, having the federal government dig their money or their hands into our pension funds and have taken hundreds of millions of dollars over the years, okay, over a decade. This has been going on, all right? Are you going to see that money is put back in, that the budgets are restored for the veterans, and that we get more than just a little bit of medical marijuana, which I do not use, I refuse to use it, or a service dog? Can we have healing and wellness centers here in the Maritimes? We can't afford to go to Ottawa for treatments that may or may not be there. We don't know if our pensions are going to be here tomorrow. We don't know if our disability pensions are still going to be paid out to us. What are you going to do for us?
Well, thank you very much. And let me start by saying thank you for your service and thank you for your sacrifice that you've given to your country. And I'm not sure exactly when you joined. I was born in '79, so I'm very pleased and proud that I grew up in a country that was '78. Okay, so there you go. But it's because of the sacrifices that people like you have made for generations that I was able to grow up in a country that was free and prosperous and safe, so thank you. We are working very hard on this file. We know that in the last election, very, very specific commitments were made by this Liberal government, commitments that were broken. The previous Conservative government had come to very close to a deal with veterans that would have given what they were looking for, and then the election happened, and the promise was made, and now that promise has been broke. You'll remember it was in a town hall with a very similar format than this, that Justin Trudeau looked a veteran in the eye and said that the problem was that veterans were asking more than he could give. I believe that's shameful. And my commitment to you, sir, and to all veterans is that when we make a deal, when we make a promise, when we say this is what the Government of Canada will be offering veterans, offering those who enlist, knowing that as they serve the Canadian Forces, that coming out on the other side, they will be looked after, they will have a pension, they will have the services that they need, and that you can take that to the bank. That will be a commitment that we will follow through on. And I just want to address the point you made about decentralizing the services. That is essential. You know, veterans live in every community in this country, and it's important that they have the services that are available to them nearby. And saying that there are centers or services that really only apply to people in a certain geographic area isn't really providing that. So we are looking at ways of making sure that in every region, in every community where there are veterans, that they have access to that. So that we also believe a big part of what we'll be offering veterans in the months to come, closer to the campaign, will be centered around the mental wellness after service, the dealing with long-term effects of post-traumatic stress, of the other types of injuries that can happen, both physical and mental, so that if things manifest themselves later on, that you'll have access to those programs. And we're going to streamline the process. You know, I spoke to a veteran in Ontario a few weeks ago, and he told me that, you know, he has to reprove time and time again. He has permanent disabilities. You know, he has injuries that will never, you know, every year, you know, so every year there's another process, there's another form, there's another, you know, someone's processing that paper. That's money being spent on administration and overhead that could be going to making sure that you're getting the services.
So I just have two quick questions. I'll be very brief. One is because you know I love the military, so I'll ask, what will you do for procurement? The Canadian Forces, certainly the procurement is very slow, it's very politicized. What can you do for that? Also, what do you think, I'm an autistic as well, so I was wondering, what about a national autism strategy? I know that Mike Lake is working on that. I certainly would like to see that for us nationally. So, all right, thank you.
Great. Well, you mentioned Mike Lake, and he is a valuable member of our team who has been working very hard on pushing for a national autism strategy, knowing that there is a big disparity of services across the country. Different provinces have different tools in place, and there is a role for the federal government to ensure that there is support there from a federal level. Understanding that, you know, we allow for we respect provincial areas of jurisdiction, but the federal government can step up and play a role in helping facilitate that type of development of services, best practices, innovation and treatment, and that any parent anywhere in the country can achieve or access a base level of services for autism. So we're going to continue working on that, and thank you for mentioning Mike Lake's good work on that. On military procurement, you're absolutely right. The procurement process in Canada for decades has been very, very political. And it's very easy during election campaigns for political parties to campaign on canceling a big contract. You know, there's a certain amount of sticker shock when you talk about replacing helicopters or jets or ships. This current Liberal government did the exact same thing. You know, they campaigned against the jets that we had chosen through a process that worked. And what was the answer instead? Well, they've decided now that they're going to replace our 40-year-old CF-18s with 40-year-old F-18s from Australia. So that's not giving our men and women in the military the cutting-edge technology that they deserve when we ask them to do the jobs that we ask them. I can't imagine can you imagine being the person who got the phone call in the Australian Air Force when found out that we were going to buy their jets? They must have popped the champagne corks that day. But Canadian servicemen and women now have to deal with the fact that we have a temporary solution that's not what they deserve to do the jobs that we're asking them. So what I'd like to do is obviously quickly address that particular issue when it comes to our fighter jets. We have a great record as a Conservative Party on our shipbuilding strategy, which has depoliticized that, brought new equipment into our Navy. And then I'd like to work with all parties really to depoliticize the procurement process on a long-term basis, so we don't see this every 5 to 10 years where the new equipment for the military becomes subject to a debate during an election that gets canceled, and then cancellation fees are paid, timelines get pushed out. Having a productive, collaborative approach with all parties in the House of Commons, that input can be provided so that the government makes a decision, and then we can say, okay, for the next 20 to 25 years, this is the cycle we're going to be working on. We know we're going to need jets at such a date. We know we're going to need planes and armored personnel. Let's have a long-term vision that will keep costs down so that there isn't that political ping pong every election with big ticket items that our servicemen and women absolutely need.
An investment that I would like to ask you about specifically are a two-part question that have quite intersectional needs within our community, both here in New Brunswick, the Maritimes, and on the national scale. Specifically is about mental health. I am aware that the Bell Let's Talk awareness campaign has recently transpired. And aside from the experiences that some who endure mental dispositions, who reach out and are looking for resources and aid, I'm wondering what the Conservative Party will be able to do to address the wait lists, the time, and especially out here in the Maritimes compared to larger cities such as in Ontario or even in Halifax in comparison. Those who are dealing with mental struggles here in New Brunswick are facing months to year-long wait lists to be able to get the basic needs for them to be able to find stability within themselves and then to come back to being contributing members of our society, which also has the intersectional point with transgender healthcare. With transgender healthcare having that intersection with mental health, there are needs that are not being met within this province, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this matter.
I very much appreciate the question, and I know we have some provincial representatives here that I'm sure will want to address these as well. Let me tell you that every Canadian family, I believe, knows someone who's affected by mental health issues. Nobody can say that they're completely unaffected by mental health issues, and it's something that I really feel proud as a Canadian to see the evolution in how mental health issues have been treated over the last 10 or 15 years, where there are more campaigns to get people talking about it, where there are more resources being put in. And I'm always impressed every year when it happens. More and more people who are in the public eye talk about their own experiences, and I think that's great. It inspires other people who may be reticent to do that to come forward to start talking about to get help. And you talked about access to services. I was at a mental health event in my hometown in Regina, and I was sitting beside Michael Landsberg, who is a big champion, a big advocate for this, a TSN personality. And the way he summed up to me, I thought was very, very apt. He said, if you walked into your doctor's office and he examined your heart, and he was worried about that you're on the cusp of having a heart attack, you would be seen that day. They would get you in, they would get you, you could very well be on the operating table before the end of the day, because that's how serious it is. But if you went into a doctor and said, I'm thinking about killing myself, then what happens? you're not going to get that type of care that quickly. And yet the threat is no less. And so we need to absolutely have a partnership between the federal government, provincial governments, local health authorities to start looking at that. It's no less important than physical challenge if someone's facing mental health. We know that the types of mental health challenges that affect, you mentioned the issue of transgendered mental health. There are all kinds of others where there are ramifications throughout families, whether we're talking about depression, anxiety, people who find themselves unable to go to work because of pressure, or things like addictions that cause multiple impacts on families and societies. So my commitment on this is to build on the good work that is already being done and making sure that the federal government plays that full partnership role as provincial governments determine the best delivery models, the best ways to ensure that, but with that goal of increasing access to services. Because there are many people that have access to therapy, to counseling, through workplace insurance, but there are many, many Canadians who don't. And the lack of space, the lack of access to that has to be addressed. So I'll commit to working with my provincial partners to make sure that is part of any national healthcare strategy. Over here, there's Richard.
Hello, and welcome to New Brunswick. As a father and family doctor, I'm very concerned about the mental health consequences of the legalization of cannabis, and I'm wondering, as Prime Minister, what your plans are with that file.
This was something that was very clearly campaigned on in the last election, and the Liberal government has proceeded with legalization. It is now legal across Canada. So our position on this file is that we will not recriminalize it. We will not, now that it is legal, there are people who are purchasing it, using it legally, and there are many businesses that have come up in that industry. So that was a choice that was made. It was a moment in time where Canadians had a choice, the Parliament had a choice, the government had a choice. But now, what happens next? And that's where I really do put a lot of blame on the Liberal government for not having any kind of a plan to deal with the after effects of that. And we heard from so many health experts about the dangers of having minimum age being so low at 18. Provincial government's not ready for the artificial timeline that was brought in, and police forces not having proper equipment to properly detect, equipment that they could count on, equipment that they would have confidence in using to prosecute people who were driving while impaired. So what we need, I believe, is a huge amount of research to track this. There's no question that this is going to have ramifications. So we need a government that's investing in making sure that we have the capacity to do studies, to track the effects on people, people who are using it for long periods of time. What are those effects, and has this had an impact on more people using it? So what we're looking at the consequences of legalization, and we are going to stand ready to make adjustments where necessary to increase those types of research and give tools to law enforcement and provincial governments who want to have different approaches. There are some premiers in the country that want a different regime in their own province, but the federal government hasn't given them that opportunity. I think with a fundamental change this significant for our country, that the government should absolutely allow for different provincial governments to try different things as they manage the impacts of the new reality.
Bonsoir, merci de votre visite. Puis, mon nom, c'est Sylvie. Ensuite, je serais curieuse de savoir, parce qu'en ce moment, notre relation Canada-États-Unis va très mal. C'est quoi vos plans pour améliorer la relation, revenir comme qu'on était avant?
Merci beaucoup pour la question. C'est clair que nos relations avec les États-Unis sont très difficiles à ce moment. Nous avons vu notre gouvernement, notre Premier ministre, signer un nouveau accord sur le libre-échange avec beaucoup de concessions pour notre pays et avec aucun gain. C'est la première fois dans une ou deux générations qu'on voit un président des États-Unis qui ne croit pas dans le libre-échange, qui ne croit pas dans les principes d'avoir un vrai partenariat avec notre pays. Alors, ça va être un enjeu très difficile pour n'importe qui va être Premier ministre. Mais le clé pour moi, c'est d'assurer que notre pays, avec le type de personnalité en Donald Trump, c'est important d'avoir notre pays dans la position d'avantage le plus que possible. Et quand on a vu les milliards de dollars qui quittent notre pays dans le secteur énergétique, quand on voit l'augmentation des impôts, on voit que les gens dans les États-Unis n'avoir pas la confiance dans notre pays pour investir. Et ça a nuit à notre position à la table de négociation. Alors, pour moi, la clé avec un président comme Donald Trump, c'est d'assurer qu'on a la position le plus fort que possible et d'assurer qu'on travaille beaucoup avec nos alliés. Ce n'est pas seulement les États-Unis que M. Trudeau a des problèmes avec. C'est la Chine, c'est l'Inde, c'est le Japon, Australie aussi. Alors, oui, c'est difficile de travailler avec le président des États-Unis, mais il y a des autres exemples où notre premier ministre n'a pas amélioré notre position dans le monde.
Typically, we lose about 2 dairy farmers or 2% to 4% a year. Since the USMCA, or since the new NAFTA came in, we're losing right around 15% of dairy producers in this province a year. There's not too many better industries to bring the money from the cities back into the countries than for farmers. We know that this is going to be devastating, this agreement that's taken place. It takes away all of our future prospect of growth for the next 15 to 20 years. It takes away our opportunities for export. It takes away so many things, and it's been so discouraging for us in the dairy industry. I'm out of it now, and one of the reasons was because I was scared about the future. Can you speak to that, please?
Thank you for your commitment to the sector, and I understand the anxiety that many dairy farmers and family farms feel all across the country with this new NAFTA deal. Trudeau promised that he would protect the sector, protect the industry, and then made it massive concessions. It was always very frustrating for me during the conversations around NAFTA because we heard the rhetoric from the United States. We heard all the tweets about farmers in Wyoming, and I feel we would always make the case as conservatives to say, hey, wait a minute. The U.S. has its own systems of different types of mechanisms to support their industry, and that doesn't get talked about as much. Floor prices, quota systems as well. All through each state has a variety of tools, and then there's of course the major U.S. Farm Bill. So we knew that was being targeted during the negotiations. I could not believe though when I saw the details about what Trudeau agreed with in terms of limiting what Canada was able to export to other countries. The dairy farmers were asked to innovate. They were asked to compete. They were asked to deal with the changing industry. They did with Class 7. They developed markets for that in the Middle East and Africa. And this is the first free trade deal I've ever seen between two countries where one country agrees not to sell to a third country, to leave space for their competitors to fill that. And that was part of what Trudeau signed on to, giving away our sovereignty to seek out export markets. So, of course, we know what they did in terms of their percentages and on Class 7 itself as a whole. The key now is to see what type of compensation is offered for that. After the CETA deal, the compensation program turned into a reimbursement program. And that's not the same thing. Asking a farmer to spend something before they get paid back is different from compensating for a loss. So we're going to be holding the Liberals to account on that as we go forward. And another issue that came up at that meeting was about the Canada Food Guide. And I'm not sure how many people are familiar with what the government has changed in the Canada Food Guide, but I said a very bold statement there. They have different labeling now, front of package labeling, and you know that a can of Diet Pop doesn't have any warning label on it, but a carton of chocolate milk will. And I have my oldest son, Thomas, is the pickiest eater you've ever met, and I believe that chocolate milk saved his life because that was the only way that we could get It was one of the few things that we could get him to eat in the early years of his life that had some nutrition in it. And I made the bold statement at the dairy farmer meeting. I said, I believe that a glass of chocolate milk is healthier than a glass of Diet Pop, and I'm willing to campaign on that. So we will continue to be there for you. Our party will continue to support you, hold the Liberal government to account, and then when we form government, do everything we can to work to address the issues that you've been handed with the new NAFTA deal.
And just to qualify my question, just in my background over the last 20 years, here in the greater Fredericton area, I've had the honor of being in over 12,000 one-on-one meetings with local small business owners, many I see around the room here this evening. So to explain my question to you, many years ago, our governments put it out there to the would-be entrepreneurs and said, we really need you. We really need entrepreneurship here in Canada, in the province of New Brunswick, because we know that it's a healthy, independent sector that supports the public sector. Without the independent sector making things happen, creating jobs, generating the revenue, that's what pays for our government employees, our RCMP, our military, our teachers, our doctors, etc. So we know it's going to be hard on you. You know, the banks say they're going to be there for you, but they're not always there for you. We say we're going to be able to be there for you when you first open up, but that's not always the way either, as much as we try. There's not going to be any EI coverage for you. So if you're sick, that's too bad. There's no sick leave. There's not going to be any pension plan out there for you. It's going to be really tough. So, but if you're willing to do that, we're going to put some incentives on the table for you as a would-be entrepreneur to make that difference in our country. So as you would be aware, the current federal government has done a lot of damage to the small business sector, one being passive income. So for those limited or incorporated companies here in the room, passive income is there so you can put some money aside in your business, maybe to allow for a rainy day if we have a flood, possibly here, somewhere in the province of New Brunswick or across Canada. Or if maybe you do get sick and you're out for several months, you can dip into that fund to help you get through the rainy days. And again, maybe to allow for investment, upgrading in your business, hiring more people, expanding your business. So, of course, we all know in this room that's under attack from the federal government. They're trying very hard to convince New Brunswick and other provinces to follow suit provincially. My question to you, when you become Prime Minister, is will you undo that damage that has been done to passive income?
So that's a simple answer. Yes, we will undo the damage that And if I could just expand a little bit on what you're talking about. You know, first of all, when this whole thing started, this caught Canadians by complete surprise. You know, when Trudeau talked about in the campaign making the rich pay more, nobody thought that he meant the mechanic, the pizza store owner, the florist, the types of local businesses, the small businesses that keep our economy going. And I got so passionate about this issue because I got my start in life because of small businesses, as so many Canadians have done. We fought that fight not just because, you know, there were 1.2 or 1.3 million Canadians that were affected by these higher taxes. We fought it because it was wrong and because there are millions more who are going to have their jobs threatened when this attack on small business started. When I was paying my way through university, I waited tables to earn my tuition. I didn't have it. That job was created because someone took a risk, opened up a restaurant, a very competitive industry. It's not guaranteed to make money in the restaurant industry, but I was able to wait tables, have income to pay my tuition, and I saw the benefits of when that business did well. I did better as well. I got more shifts. I was busier, and there's more money in my pocket at the end of the week. When I moved to Regina, I worked for a husband and wife who had literally sold the family farm to start an insurance company. I didn't have any training. They paid for my certification. They paid for me to study for the course, ensured that I passed it, and then I was licensed. I got my accreditation because of their investment in me. And there is not enough money in Ottawa to replace what the free market and entrepreneurs do for people like me all my entire life. And worst of all, it was the rhetoric, wasn't it? It was calling small business owners tax cheats, saying that things like passive investment is dead money. I mean, if the money in a small business that's being used for a mat leave, saving up to buy a second location or invest in a piece of, if that's dead money, then I'd love to know what Justin Trudeau and Bill Morneau consider the money that's in trust funds just sitting there in the park generating revenue. What's that dead money like? So yes, we're going to partner. We're going to celebrate the success that entrepreneurs have had because of the benefits that gives to Canadians all across the country, and we will absolutely make sure that our government policy is always making it easier for people to succeed in business, so that those opportunities can be spread with Canadians in every part of this country. So thank you for the question.
We have a premier here in New Brunswick who has shown commitment to reviving the Energy East project, and I know you mentioned that you were also interested in doing that. But yeah, we see this great opposition coming from Quebec, and I would really like to know how you plan on making sure that that project goes through.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much for the question. I just want to frame this in a very important way. When Conservatives were in power, we didn't have to have conversations about governments building pipelines, because the private sector did it. The private sector did it with investors' money. The government created the conditions for these types of things to succeed, and business did it, investors did it, and people got jobs, and we developed our resources. We saw the revenues roll in for provincial governments. That's the way it should work. And 4 major pipeline projects were built under the Conservative government, increasing our capacity to export our oil by over 1 million barrels a day. Then Justin Trudeau becomes Prime Minister, and the first thing he did was kill Northern Gateway. Now, Northern Gateway was a very important project because it would have brought Western Canadian energy to Asian markets. It's a deep water port. It would have opened up markets in China and India, in all throughout the Asia Pacific. So that was killed. Then they killed Energy East. And they like to tell you that that was a business decision by the proponents of Energy East. That's nonsense. They imposed a double standard upstream and downstream emissions test on that project. And so that's when the proponents backed away. There's no other industry in Canada that faces that kind of upstream and downstream test. You know, the auto sector doesn't have to account for emissions on the raw materials that go into a car, and they don't have to account for the emissions that happen after the car rolls off the line. The aerospace sector doesn't have to account for that. And I get very frustrated when I see people talk down Canada's energy sector. You know, I see people tying themselves to trees and laying down in front of bulldozers to block exports of Canadian energy. Exports of Canadian energy that's developed with the highest environmental standards in the world, with some of the best labor legislation around the world to protect workplace safety, where the profits from those sales go into Canadian pension funds, goes into the RSPs of millions of Canadians, the pensions of public sector, private sector unions, anyone with savings vehicles, and provides jobs and opportunities for so many people all across the country benefit from those jobs, either directly because they work in, sometimes they leave to go work for a period of time, or because of manufacturing and secondary industry. So I see these people blockading Canada sharing with the world the energy that we take out according to all those standards. But I don't see them lining up and down the St. Lawrence, blocking tanker after tanker of foreign oil coming into Canada from places like Saudi Arabia and Iraq. We know that there was a refinery right here in New Brunswick that wanted that was willing to make significant investments. We talk about stimulating the economy. We talk about government stimulating the economy with infrastructure. Well, that was a private sector infrastructure project that would have created thousands of jobs. And I know Premier Higgs supports that. I'm very proud to be able to work with him on that. I believe that when you have a system that has an independent, transparent, science-based approvals process, that if a proponent of a project meets those very tough standards, meets the as I said, the highest environmental standards in the world, we don't just let anyone build a pipeline. You've got to make sure it's safe, it's secure. You got to make sure the route is proper, that there's adequate, not just adequate, but robust consultations with First Nations communities. When you've met all those tests, we have to live in a country where we can get to a yes. We have to be able to build things in this country, and not any one person, not any one person opposing these types of things should get a veto. And so my commitment is to make sure that process exists, where people can have confidence in it, and where ultimately, when those criteria are met, when those very difficult, tough standards to achieve are achieved, that we have the ability to actually proceed with it.
I'm a physician in New Brunswick and very passionate with our present government in trying to improve healthcare services for our province. My question has to do with infrastructure, actually. I listen a lot of the rhetoric that occurs at the national level about carbon tax and infrastructure spending. So there's kind of a linked question. So for instance, we have a lot of infrastructure in New Brunswick, whether it's hospitals, schools, or roads. We don't need more roads. We need to maintain the structures that we have. We need to improve the structures that we have. So the infrastructure money that is being spent, or 50-50, is absolutely ludicrous for a province or many of the Atlantic provinces, because our provinces can't match that. So it's dead money, really, because we can't do that, and we would like to see more infrastructure money towards maintaining what we have. Second to that is infrastructure with regards to the carbon tax. So a lot of times we hear that in New Brunswick or in other Atlantic provinces, we get compared to, oh, well, BC's and Ontario are booming economy because of carbon tax. Well, please come visit our provinces, because we have low numbers with expanded geography. We have no infrastructure to support anything but wood and electric. So please tell us how we can do this without infrastructure, and that infrastructure money has to come federally for maintaining what we have and to improve the infrastructure so that we can have more of a green economy.
Conservatives do believe in partnerships with provinces to achieve increases in infrastructure spending so that we have a better quality of life, so that our roads last longer. We can open up more of our provinces, of our rural areas for development. One of the things we did during our government was we made the gas tax funding permanent. And so that is a direct line from federal government taxation on gasoline right into municipalities so that they can address those infrastructure needs. We did also bring in the Building Canada program, which is that cost share provincial federal, which you mentioned is a significant challenge for provinces. So I understand that challenge. It is something that we are looking at, how best we can adapt to some of the different challenges that different provinces are needing on a way that's fair with all Canadians in every province. But I point to the gas tax permanency as one of the initiatives we did to help alleviate some of the burdens with provincial governments. So we'll continue to have good conversations with provincial partners. One of the things I will commit to is that the Premier's meetings that I will convene won't just be photo ops to get my picture taken with provinces, but actually to sit down and find the right solutions.
Hi. Last year, the Supreme Court ruled against Gerard Como in the beer case. And I'm wondering what actions you would take to encourage free trade across the country instead of letting the provinces impede it.
I don't believe the federal government should be empowering provincial protectionism. And stay tuned, because we're going to have a series of policies that speak to tearing down provincial trade barriers, not just in terms of goods and services, but also people. Allowing companies in one province to be able to compete for work in another province. That creates competition, that creates better products for consumers, better services for people looking for contracts, and ultimately better economic growth. So that's going to be a big part of our trade liberalization policy, will be to remove the types of things, because there are some laws on the books, there's things federally that empower some of that provincial protectionism. And I don't believe in this day and age that we need to continue doing that for that. I think provincial governments should take a look at that themselves, and the federal government should play a leadership role in incentivizing and encouraging them to do that. We've had several meetings on this, and we have a minister responsible for it, but there's been no real progress in the 3.5 years that this government's been in office. But we've got some exciting policy announcements that we'll be unveiling a little bit closer to the election campaign.
The funding, as Tom Cleveland has pointed out, the funding of Hamas through sending our tax dollars down to Hamas through Islamic Relief Canada, to funding UNRWA again, and of course organizations that take money to provide halal certifications on foods and other such things, to turn around, take that money and fund Hamas. This government has allowed this to go on. And my question to you is, as Prime Minister, what are you going to do to ensure that Canadians get justice?
I'm always very alarmed when we hear reports of returning ISIS fighters walking our streets without any consequence. Our party, vast majority of Canadians were outraged when Justin Trudeau chose to write a check to Omar Khadr, a convicted terrorist. We opposed that payment. We believe that was the wrong thing to do and that he didn't have to do it. And as you mentioned, we know that there are some organizations around the world that do provide support to groups that radicalize people. And we have spoken out against funding for UNRWA. That's one where there has been a lot of documented proof that that is going to teach people hate. And we've seen the examples of the textbooks and the material that are being provided to children to raise them with a sense of hatred for not just Israel as a state, but also for Jews as a people. That has to stop. Canada should not be in the business of funding those types of elements that spread hate and division.
Welcome to the land of the big lake.
Yes, that's right.
Recently, a pretty boy in Ottawa signed a compact on immigration. What are your feelings on that?
On the which, sorry? The
compact
on migration.
UN compact on immigration.
Well, a lot of things that are in the compact, and a lot of the things that people talk about are very noble aims. You know, we all want to make sure that people who are facing difficulty around the world, people who are fleeing conflict, have opportunities to be safe and secure. But recognizing that there is a difference between people fleeing persecution and people wanting to come to Canada for a better opportunity. That is normal. That has happened for hundreds of years in North America, people coming to take advantage of the freedoms and the opportunities that we have. But we do have an immigration system where people are asked to follow the law and to apply properly, and so that our government can ensure that there are the appropriate measures in place, and that when you have a goal in the compact of treating people well, giving people the same rights and protections that others have, that those are all things we can agree on as good aims, as noble aims. But when you look at other things in the compact and you say, well, why is that there? And why is there a measure in the compact about governments incentivizing the way the media covers these issues and discouraging certain types of reporting? Well, when you see the invitation of government to get involved in how issues are covered, I think that's an overreach. I don't believe the state has a role in manipulating news coverage and media coverage on important issues facing Canadians.
I'm very interested to hear more about your plan to enable Canada and Canadians to transition very rapidly to a low-carbon economy.
Well, as innovations take place and as companies invest in different types of power sources, those types of things will be occurring in some cases naturally as part of the economy progresses and society progresses, and the government can absolutely play a role in encouraging innovation as well. And the energy sector itself has made huge gains. When you look at the efficiency and extraction in the oil sector and natural gas, we've really come a long way as a country. And the thing I think that is so essential is that we need to make sure that we don't actually see an increase in global emissions because we export emissions to other countries and the jobs that go along with them. And so, for example, we can make aluminum here in Canada thanks to hydroelectricity, thanks to a cheaper and cleaner source of power at a fraction of the emissions that will come out of that same factory if it were in China or India, where it doesn't have access to the cleaner technology. So I've never thought it made sense to punish Canadian industries that have innovated and adapted and come a long way, add something like a carbon tax and make it harder to do business here in Canada, just to see them shut down, pop up in another country, and global emissions actually go up because of that. So I think we need to take credit for what we do well here in Canada, and that should be part of our case that we make to the world, is that we should actually be doing more things here in Canada because we can reduce global emissions if we leverage the advantages that Canada has. So investments in innovation, incentivizing some of the things that we're going to be talking about in our environmental plan. It will be incentivizing and assisting Canadians in energy efficiencies and reducing their carbon footprint, while at the same time recognizing and being proud of the quality of energy that we can extract here in Canada, and the belief that we should be exporting that around the world to displace the types of energy that are being developed in countries that don't have those same standards and don't have the same commitments to fundamental Canadian principles like human rights, freedom, and regional security.
I'm sure by now you've seen the media reports about the report that came out last week regarding the Restigouche Hospital Center in Camilton. That report was a scathing report in regards to the care, neglect, abuse, over-medicated. This is a mental health facility we're talking about. And if I seem a little bit nervous, and it's because I am. I have a vested interest in this. My son is 26, and he's at that facility and has been for 7 years. I would just like to know, on a federal level, what a Scheer PC government would do to ensure that all levels of government are following the guidelines set forth within their own province, and furthermore to that, what you would do to ensure their basic fundamental human rights and charter rights are protected. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and you certainly have my deepest sympathies for any types of challenges that you're going through, and any anxiety you're feeling because of that report. I can only imagine as a parent what kind of impact that would have on you, and I can tell immediately that you are very concerned about not just the quality of care that your son is getting, but the real concern that you have that there may be very bad things happening. So my commitment to you is to make sure that as we partner with provinces in delivery of healthcare services, that there are measures to ensure that internationally accepted standards are being followed, that everything from patients' bill of rights to ensuring access to facilities for people who have family members who are facing these types of challenges. And also, we always need to ensure that anytime there's any type of government program, any type of government partnership, that there has to be accountability and oversight. And so I will commit to you now to have a chat with the Premier, get up to speed on exactly what the report means for people like you and your family, and to just make sure that if there's things that we can do as a federal government come October this year, that we'll absolutely be looking to proceed with those. So thank you very much for raising that issue. So I'm getting the signal. Is that time on, or do we have time for that? Okay. So we, like, as in the House of Commons, when you run out of time, they cut you off. So, je veux vous remercier sincèrement. Ce soir a été un très grand plaisir. C'est toujours une très bonne opportunité pour moi d'écouter les enjeux qui sont importants pour les gens de Nouveau-Brunswick et partout au pays. I really enjoy these types of events because I get to hear directly from you. We get a lot of questions in Ottawa from other parties, from the media, but when I get to meet people on this scale, so many people in this room tonight, and hear from you what's important to your life, what you're looking for, that's very rewarding and encouraging for me. And my commitment to you as we get closer and closer to the next election is that you're going to see a policy platform that is developed with your input, with what the grassroots in this country are looking for. Not developed because there are government lobbyists and corporate lobbyists in Ottawa fighting for what's good for them. Our party is always looking for what helps people. How every lens that we look through when we're hearing ideas for our campaign platform is, will this help Canadians get ahead? Under a Conservative government, we will make sure that you are able to get ahead, not just get by. That's going to be the key choice in this election. Which party best represents what you want to get out of your life? And a Conservative party will always be looking to make sure that we're lowering your taxes, creating the conditions for economic growth, because that is the best way to ensure that Canadians have an opportunity to increase their quality of life and have an even better future than their parents had before them. That's my vision for this country, where each generation of Canadians constantly has it better and better, because you've got a government that wants to be partners in your success, not a government that's always standing in the way and making life more difficult. So thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. C'est toujours un plaisir d'être avec vous.